Namaskar everyone and welcome to the Gita Satsang. Let's start with the Prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Gita Satsang. May we have their guidance and be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let us chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnaya Vasudevaya Haraye Paramatmane Pranata Klesha Nashaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Namostu Te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindaya Tapatra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Ramanujadaya Patram Jnana Vairagya Bhushanam श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्दे वेदान्तदेशिकम् यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुग्म व्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये. With prayers at the lotus feet of the Acharyas, let us go to our shlokas for today. So in the previous satsang, we have seen up to shloka 44 of the 6th chapter. Today we continue with shloka 55. We will take 45, 46 and 47. These are the concluding 3 shlokas of the 6th chapter. So in shloka 45, Krishna is telling Arjuna, Prayatnadyata yogi samshuddha kilbishah Aneka janma samsiddhas tato yati parangatim. The yogi, striving earnestly, purified of all negative karma and perfected gradually through many births, such a yogi reaches the supreme goal. So, to just recap what we had seen in the previous shlokas, Arjuna had a doubt that what will happen if somebody who is engaged in the pursuit of yoga suddenly gets diverted because of some desire for some other kind of pleasures? Will he be lost? Will he be like a cloud that has cut off from its main family of clouds? Will he just float here and there and have nothing? Like, is there no support for him? What will happen to him? Like that Arjuna had asked. So to that Krishna had replied that even if somebody who is engaged on the path of yoga gets diverted for a while and he wants to experience the pleasures of the higher planets, the higher lokas, he will be granted that desire. But at the end of that time, like whatever he wants to enjoy in Svarga, after he has finished that enjoyment, later he will be again born on this Bhuloka. To whom he will be born? He will be born into a family where the environment is conducive for him to continue his spiritual practice. So he will be born in a situation where he will continue from where he had left off in the previous Janmas. And we had seen the example of Jadabharata to understand this concept. So now, continuing further, Krishna is telling about how this person attains finally the supreme goal. Now, Arjuna had a doubt. Okay, somebody got birth in a conducive environment, in a good family, which is supportive of his yoga vyasa. Will that person then succeed in getting Atmanubhava? Is only that much enough for him? So Krishna is telling him that if there is such a person who has temporarily got diverted from the track, but then again he got Janma into a conducive environment, this person will now, because of all the past punyas that he has, because of whatever good deeds he has accumulated from the past, this person will now take effort to do yoga in a meaningful way. He will try to control his senses. He will involve more and more in the practice of yoga. He will spend more and more of his time and energy in pursuing yoga. And because of all these punyas which he has accumulated, all the papas gradually start to get completely destroyed. And by that process, because he has a lot of punya, because he has lost his papas, he reaches the state where he has Atma Sakshatkara. He attains the experience of the self. He attains Atmanubhavam. So that is the situation of this person. So here, we must try and understand how Krishna has been bringing Arjuna to this stage. That first, when we saw in chapter 1, we had seen that in chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita, we had seen that Arjuna was despondent. He thought, oh, they are all my own family people. How can I fight against them? How can I kill them? And so on. In the second chapter, and then in that state of despondency, he surrendered completely to Krishna and said, you have to guide me. I am trusting that you are the only right person to guide me ahead. In the second chapter, therefore, Krishna explained to Arjuna that what you are thinking as my uncle, my grandfather, my brother, my cousin, and so on, all those are only restricted in a relationship to the body, and that body is temporary. Whatever, if you kill somebody, you are only going to kill their body, but you cannot do anything to the Atma. The Atma is far, far, far superior to the body. It is Nitya, it is eternal. So, like that, in the second chapter, Krishna explained how the Atma is superior to the body. Then the third chapter, he showed Arjuna that Karma Yoga is the path to get to the stage of Atma Sakshatkara. Now, what all was explained in that Karma Yoga? Things like doing tapas, doing meditation, going on a pilgrimage, doing puja, doing yajnas, all these things which are told by the Shastras as margas to reach to Atmanubhava. Doing all these, that is what is called as Karma Yoga. So, Krishna had explained about that. And he had told Arjuna very clearly that these are the activities which take one further on that path, not just involving in worldly activities, but rather doing all these activities which are prescribed by the Shastras. Later, in the fourth and in the fifth chapter, Krishna had been talking about how merely doing the karma was not sufficient. The karma, the action part, has to be done along with jnana, along with a knowledge, with an understanding of why we have to do this. So the idea was that we should not mechanically do these karmas which are prescribed by the Shastras. Rather, we should do them with the idea that they are going to take me to the state of Atma Sakshatkara. That I am doing this for the superior goal of attaining moksha. That is what that is what was explained in the further chapters. And now Krishna is telling Arjuna that somebody who has kept on doing like this, and now they are in the state where they are continuously doing yoga abhyasa, such a person finally gets to the supreme goal. What is the supreme goal? Right from the beginning, the supreme goal has been told to be Atmanubhava, to reach the stage of Kaivalya, where somebody is only involved with experience of the self. They are untouched by anything that happens in the world around them. Rather, their whole focus is entirely and completely on their Atma. So that is the supreme goal. That is what Krishna has told Arjuna so far. Now, he says to Arjuna, he encourages Arjuna that, oh Arjuna, you should also become a yogi. So what he is saying here in this 46th shloka, Krishna is comparing. He is comparing the yogi with people who pursue other margas, other paths of spiritual practice. So he says, tapasvibhyodhiko yogi jnanibhyopi matodhikaha karmibhyashchadhiko yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. So what he is telling him is, oh Arjuna, you become a yogi. Why? Because this yogi, whom he is talking about, is superior to somebody who is a tapasvi, to the ascetic. He is superior to someone who is a jnani, someone who is an intellectual. And he is even superior to somebody who is involved with karmas, the ritualists. Therefore, O Arjuna, becoming a yogi is the most superior thing you can do. So, I am telling you, you become a yogi. So, in this shloka, Krishna is definitely giving Arjuna the direction that you have to become a yogi. So, to convince Arjuna that indeed the yogi is the most superior of all the sadhakas, he draws a comparison between the yogi and those who are doing other margas of sadhana. So he says, somebody who does penance, somebody who is an ascetic or a tapasvi, the yogi is superior to that person. Then he says, somebody, a jnani. Who is a jnani? Somebody who seeks knowledge, somebody who is used to utilizing his intellect. That person is a jnani. So the yogi is superior to him also. And who is the karmi person? Somebody who involves with doing karmas, who does ritualistic worship. So the yogi is supposed to him also. Now we may think that all along, everywhere in the Shastras and all, we see that a lot of importance is given to those who do tapasya. It is always told that somebody who has done a lot of tapasya is a very great soul, isn't it? Even in the Ramayana, we see in the introduction, in the starting part, Valmiki, Narada, they are all addressed as being great tapasvis. And so here, when Krishna is telling that the yogi is superior to the tapasvi, does it mean that Krishna is making, putting down the tapasvis? Is he belittling the process of tapasya? No. Here the acharyas explain that what does Krishna mean when he say the yogi is superior to the tapasvi? If there is somebody who is doing tapas for the supreme goal of attaining moksha, that tapasvi is indeed very superior. But most of the time, we have seen that people who do tapasya do it with some definite goal in mind. They want to attain some particular boons, or they want to attain certain fruits. They want to get something as an outcome, as a result of their tapasya. So their tapasya is focused on some kind of a result or to get some fruit in this world. People may do tapasya for wealth. They may do tapasya for fame. They may do tapasya to get to a state of power. They may do tapasya to attain the throne, right? So, like this, a lot of people do tapasya for many different reasons. So, if there is somebody who is doing tapasya for the sake of some cheap worldly results, or there is somebody who is doing tapasya for the sake of getting a boon to harm other people, that kind of tapasya is not at all good. And the yogi is superior to somebody who is doing tapasya like this. We all have heard of examples of so many rakshasas, so many asuras doing tapasya, right? We know the example of Ravana, for example. He did so much tapasya. We know about Hiranyakashipu. All these people did so much tapasya. For what? So that they should become all powerful and they should be so powerful that nobody can come in their way and they can continue to do all the evil things that they have in their heart. So that kind of tapasya is being condemned. Now, there are people, now here when we say jnani, person who seeks knowledge. Why Krishna is saying that yogi is superior to jnani? Because many times the jnani may have lot of knowledge, but unless he is able to see the practical application of that, unless he is able to act as per that jnana is of no use. Like for example, we may have many pandits, many learned people who have studied the entire Mahabharata, who have studied the entire Ramayana, and they will have a lot of jnana. But unless they adopt the principles that are taught in those itihasas in their life, then what is the use of that? Let's say there is somebody we all know among the Kauravas, for example, we know the names of the major ones. We know Duryodhana, we know Dushasana. Do we know the names of the other 98 brothers of Duryodhana? We don't know. So we may not be jnani from that point of view. There may be somebody who knows all those 98 names also. But in what way does it benefit that person? Just having that jnana is not going to be of any use. If they are able to understand that they should not be like those 100 Kauravas and they understand and adopt in their life the good qualities, then there is some value to that, right? So compared to such a jnani who only has knowledge for the sake of knowledge, the yogi is superior. And people who do rituals. Many times people perform certain pujas, they do certain yajnas, they want particular benefits. Like they will do some homa so that they have good health, or they will do some homa yajna so that they have lot of wealth. Like that, they will do for worldly benefits. So, compared to all those people, the yogi is also superior to them. So, if you see in reality, why Krishna is saying that the yogi is superior to all these categories of people? Because the yogi also, when he is doing yoga abhyasa, actually what he is also doing tapasya. He is also performing penance. He also is a jnani. He has jnana of what is important in this life and how he has to attain moksha. And he is doing karma by harnessing this jnana for his benefit, right? So, such a kind of a yogi is superior to all those others who are doing it just for the sake of doing it. So this yogi does tapasya, this yogi is having jnana, and he is also doing karmas. He is also doing ritualistic worship. But what is the outcome? What is the goal? What is the what you say the focus of all these things that the yogi does? They are all aligned to attain the supreme goal of Atma Sakshatkara. And whatever he does, whether he does tapa, whether he does jnana marga, or he does karma, all of them are aligned. He is focused on the fact that I am doing all this to attain the goal of Atma Sakshatkara. And therefore, he is not doing it for any petty worldly benefits. And so, he is superior to people who are belonging to those other margas. This is what Krishna is trying to explain. Now, we will see in the final shloka, in the 47th shloka of the Bhagavad Gita, of the 6th chapter, which is a very important shloka, we will see that all along Krishna has now been talking about Atma Sakshatkara, experience of Atma, Atmanubhava as being the supreme goal. And now suddenly he's going to change the track and he's going to take us in a direction where from the next 7th chapter onwards, he's going to lead us. He talked about jnana, he talked about karma, he talked about yoga abhyasa. Now he's going to talk about bhakti. So as a kind of introduction to that 7th chapter where he's going to discuss about bhakti, in the last 47th shloka of the 6th chapter, Krishna tells Arjuna, Yogi namapi sarvesham madgatenantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. O Arjuna, it is my opinion. I consider that among all the yogis and among everybody, compared to anybody else, the one whose inner self is directed towards me, towards Krishna, towards the Lord, the one who worships me with faith, with Shraddha, Shraddhavan bhajate yomam. Such a person by me is considered as the most accomplished person. He is the most accomplished soul. So this shloka, the Acharyas all explain, is the most important shloka and a very superior shloka because it marks a significant change in what Krishna has been telling. All along he was taking us along the track of Atmanubhava, Atma Sakshatkara and brought us till there. Now suddenly he's flipped a switch and moved us in a totally entirely different direction. So whom Krishna considers to be the best of all the yogis? He says that somebody who thinks that the goal is not just Atma Sakshatkara, but beyond that, somebody who wants to attain the lotus feet of the Lord as the ultimate goal, that yogi is the most superior. So much time he told Arjuna that getting Atmanubhava is the supreme goal. That is the most important thing in the journey. Now he says that one must not stop at that level of Atma Sakshatkara because that is a very dry state. First of all, we are not able to visualize our Atma. We have some experience of Ananda in that Atmanubhava state, but that is a very limited kind of experience. It is like going to a dead end. But instead, if the yogi learns that to be in the company of the Lord, serving him in Sri Vaikuntha, that is the supreme goal, then that is like the entire treasure house of bliss is revealed to that person. So that yogi whose inner self, now he's got experience of the Atma, and now he goes further on that path and he says that it is not enough for me to experience my own Atma, but I must have experience of the Paramatma. So with lot of faith in the Lord, with lot of bhakti, he does, with lot of shraddha, with lot of faith, he does upasana. He worships the Lord. He has bhakti in the Lord. This kind of a yogi is called as the most superior. So Krishna is saying, in my opinion, this is what is the most superior kind of yogi. Why it is important for us to know what is the Lord's opinion? Because after all, he is the master of the universe, right? He is the one who created this universe. He is the one who is the sustainer of the universe. He is the one who will also bring about laya of the universe. So he is the most important entity in this universe. All of us owe our existence to the Lord. So whatever is the opinion of the Lord, what is the mata of the Lord, that is definitely the most important thing for us. So now here we can pause and see that Krishna has now designated, he has categorized all sadhakas, all people into three categories. Those who are doing sadhana. First, those who pursue the tapas or they pursue jnana or they pursue karma for worldly benefits. They are doing tapascharya, they are following jnana marga or they are doing karma yoga. For what purpose? To attain some worldly benefits. So they are the good category. Definitely they are better than those who are doing nothing at all. So they come into the category of good people. Second, Higher to those are those, the yogis, who do all of these but for the purpose of Atmanubhava. So those are better category of people. And most important, the most superior, the best category of people are the yogis who direct all their actions, and everything that they do is for the purpose of Paramatma Anubhava. Not only not only self Atmanubhava, but for experience, for Anubhava of the Lord Himself. Somebody who wants to attain moksha and be in the presence of the Lord in Sri Vaikuntha, be a servant of the Lord in Sri Vaikuntha. That category of yogis, Krishna says, according to me, they are the most special ones. So, what is this journey that we have been on? What is the journey that Krishna has brought Arjuna on so far? In the starting of the Bhagavad Gita, he made Arjuna realize the greatness of the Atma, the superiority of the Atma, that the Atma is eternal, it is different from the Sharira. Then he tried to teach Arjuna that you should be doing all actions which are prescribed by the Shastras. Then he brought him to the stage where he said that do actions, but don't do them for lowly worldly pleasures, but for the purpose of Atma Sakshatkara. And now he's taking him further along and saying, you may reach Atma Sakshatkara, but the journey is not complete. You have to go further to experience the bliss which comes by being in the presence of the Paramatma. Because just the bliss of the Atma is like a dead end. So you continue further because there is much, much more superior Ananda which is waiting for you from experiencing the Paramatma and his devotees in Sri Vaikuntha. So, this is what Krishna has been explaining, and he has told Arjuna so far. So, in the next shloka, in the next chapter onwards, we will be entering into the stage of Bhakti Yoga. Krishna is going to explain in detail about what is Upasana, what is Bhakti, what are the different kinds of people who do Bhakti, how all people pursue Bhakti, and so on. In this last shloka of the sixth chapter, he has laid the foundation by saying that do everything that you have to do whatever is prescribed in the Shastras, but do it for the purpose of attaining me, for reaching my lotus feet. Do it with that bhava that you are doing it as an offering to me. So, that is the very base, the very foundation of Bhakti Yoga that Krishna has laid down in the last shloka of the sixth chapter. So, with that, we will stop the satsang here for today. Going ahead in the next satsang, we will take up the seventh chapter and we will see what all beautiful things Krishna is waiting to tell us when it comes to the practice of Bhakti Yoga. How we have to practice Bhakti, what should be our attitude, what we should seek, and what are the means and methods that we can use to reach to that state of experiencing the Paramatma. So, thank you everybody for joining in. We will meet again next week. Now let us offer Kritagnata, let us offer gratitude at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna and Guru. Let us thank them for blessing us, for inspiring us to start this satsang, to join this satsang, and let us pray for their blessings and grace to always be on us. Thank you everyone. Namaskar. We'll meet again next week as usual.